Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday.
It's like we haven't talked in an entire week.
So funny. Oh, by the way, I'm Amy Solara.
Oh, I'm Jeremy Renta. See, I forgot this time. Look at that.
You did. It's only because you forgot that I remembered. And this is Mantra and Magic.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Week 5. We were saying this is pretty amazing that he and I have stuck to it this far.
Yeah, honestly, when we were talking earlier this week, I was kind of like, oh, I wonder if she's getting burnt out. I wonder if I'm getting burnt out. I was like, no, this is what we love doing. This is what we love talking about. This is like an opportunity to actually share the things that we love in a platform where we don't have to have anybody telling us we're crazy.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Like first I'm going to take off all the bracelets I'm wearing. I'm wearing a bunch of crystals and they're jingling. There. Second, I was contemplating today, like how many people I can talk to and listen to and have them not look at me like I'm from a different planet, even though I am, and have what they say sound really familiar and true and like something that we can keep having a conversation about. Like there's so many people where if I just walked up to them and said like, hey, do you know what star lineage ancestry you have? Just look at me like, I'm sorry, is that part of 23andMe?
Yeah, are you talking to me?
And I would say, no, I'm talking about like the Galactic Federation that exists. And it's so far out of the norm. Mm-hmm. And it's even kind of far into certain spiritual circles. There's certain spiritual circles that don't even acknowledge half of the stuff that I know to be true.
Right.
And so like I've always loved talking with you because the day we met, it was like, oh, what are we doing? We're sitting in plant ceremony so that we can talk to dead people and angels and plant guides and read tarot cards and talk about the astrological weather.
Figure out how to activate our light body, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm grateful that it has shifted a little bit more. I mean, it's also, I live in Boulder, you live in Phoenix, so there are more people who are into the esoteric. And I've noticed too, it's just like, I mean, with Instagram, there are more people that are into it. It may just be the fact that that's the stuff that I follow. Like it is really interesting when you start looking at the bubble that we exist in.
Oh yeah.
Because I look at the YouTube clips of the people that I'm following and I'm like, oh, this guy's got a lot of views. He's got like 10,000 on this one video. And then you look at, anything that's actually trending and it's in the millions, it's in the hundreds of thousands. And it's like, well, this is the niche that I want to be in. These are the people that I want to be learning from. And these are the people that I want to be talking to. So
yeah. And chances are that
grow,
if you're listening to Jeremy and I talking right now, you're ready to hear a lot of the stuff that would be deemed crazy by all those millions of viewers that are watching a cat like do a backflip.
Mm-hmm.
So you're ready. Like not everyone is ready. There are a lot of people who are waking up right now and they don't know where to turn or what to listen to or who to believe. And so hopefully me and you having these conversations is going to help at least a little bit, because that's the goal, right? We're not going to wake anybody up. You have to do that on your own. But we can be here once you've fallen down the rabbit hole and you want to know whether to go straight or forward or through the tree trunk with the Cheshire cat.
And if you are in the back of an Uber right now and you're going to a friend's underground party to drink, Amy and I have both been in that position too, where we were on our path and we were still doing things that we knew didn't align with the journey that we were actually on. So don't feel bad about that either. Like, learn what you can, make the changes that you can, do it in your own time, and don't feel like things need to be perfect right is wrong. I find myself kicking myself and beating myself up for mistakes that I made, 10 years ago. I'm like, that was one of the biggest mistakes I ever made. And it's like, well, I wouldn't be here if I hadn't made those mistakes. Like you literally do have to learn. If this is a university, which I believe that it is, you have to start out everything that we learn starts with a point of not knowing, right? That's one of the things my partner says. And it's like, you literally can't beat yourself up over things that you don't know. It may just be that you have no memory of the thing, Like we literally come here with a lot of the stuff that we have from our previous lives, or with the goals that we have in this lifetime. And then there's a, like, the magnet goes over the VHS tape and then we're completely wiped. And then we are, spat out into the universe and we have to relearn everything. That's what the whole chakra thing is. We're going from the root back up. We came down and now we're doing the journey again. We're on this wave. We're on this roller coaster.
Right. We're remembering.
Exactly. Yeah.
And what I feel like, okay, it's not just a remembering, there's a willingness, right? Because there's plenty of people who aren't on their path, who aren't spiritually, or who aren't interested in spirituality, I should say. They might be interested in religion because it's a community thing or a family thing, but they're not necessarily interested in actual spiritual practices that are involved with the religion. And I've heard them say like, oh, one time, I think I saw something. And they acknowledge that there's a lot to the world that they can't see or they can't understand, but they don't want to believe it. Because the second that you believe it, the second that you give it a voice and you give it sight and you give it sound, suddenly the whole universe that you have set up for yourself collapses. And I've witnessed it so many times where people are like on the verge and I'm really excited for them. And then they choose not to engage right now. And you know what? If that happens and to someone in your family, or if that happens to one of your best friends where you're like, whoa, like waking up really fast and everything's occurring. And there's all these synchronicities and you're seeing things around the corner and you're seeing auras and just all sorts of stuff, but they start to, and then they pull back. Again, be really compassionate, be really gentle. Not everybody's ready to step into that warrior aspect that's required of us at this time.
That being said, too, if things are seeking you out, there is a reason for that. My partner and I, Lindsay, she works with clients, clearing trauma. She's a licensed professional counselor. So she talks with a lot of people clearing stuff from their past. She works with a lot of kids who don't have words for the way that they're able to verbalize the things that they're holding on to. And, I deal with like physical manipulation of muscle and energetics with people on the table. And there has been a major shift in the past couple of weeks because, a lot of like one-on-ones have kind of closed down. And so now a lot of stuff is being done remotely. And because of that, I've started to notice that energetics are kind of seeking us out in our house. It used to be that I would clear after I'd get done working on people to make sure that I wasn't literally tracking esoteric mud into the house, because you bring in spiritual mud that you've worked on people, things kind of cling to us. And I've started to notice, because I'm literally not working on people, like energetics either from other places or from other things are seeking me out. And I think we had talked about this. I know we talked about this earlier this week. If that's the case, don't be frightened. Like a lot of the times we feel like the kid from The Sixth Sense, where like there are these things that are really terrifying that are showing up for us. And, you were saying, you were telling me like, set a space outside, keep your house completely protected, but like leave a spot outside for those energies to go.
No,
and then you can rest them.
I think someone else,
you
were telling me that.
Yeah. Yeah, I was actually.
You were telling me that. No, I was saying that you should be feeling less muck in your area by engaging less with other people in the physical realm, because there's a lot of other barriers. So you and I are having like a completely different experience.
Yeah, we're having a dichotomous view on this. Yeah.
Yeah, which is good, I think, for everybody listening, because there might be some people like me who are feeling so pleasant and so airy and so able to tap in when we want to and dip out when we want to, when it comes to what's going on collectively. And as an empath, I think it's really important to be able to choose when you're feeling what everybody else is feeling, when you to choose when to acknowledge like that a lot of the world is in a place of panic and fear, but not everybody is. And I really appreciate all of the virtual stuff, because that's how I work anyway. I prefer to do all of my psychic work through a computer, because I don't like to be in other people's energetic fields, because I feel like it cuts off the things that I'm receiving from their guides and guardians and their soul. So if I'm doing tarot or if I'm doing Akashic records or anything, I feel like I get a clearer line up to their highest self when they're not physically present in the room with me.
Right.
And I'm working on a completely different wavelength and a completely different focus. Like the point of the sessions that I'm doing are entirely different than what you do, Jared. And I think that's why you're feeling so energetically overwhelmed, is because you work on the opposite spectrum. You work in person, in their field, in their body.
Right.
And
I don't know if it's necessarily overwhelmed. It's just that the way that the things are showing up, it's like they're asking for help. Like the other day, I was in my private practice office, and every time that I've been in there, it's an incredibly old building. It's been there for almost 100 years, or a little over 100 years. The building was actually moved back off of 28th Street. They like moved it and put it on a new foundation. So it's like double cinder blocks on the lower levels. It's a really, really dense energy. It was a hospital before it got turned into what it is now, which is a healing space. There's massage practitioners, energetic practitioners, and therapists that are in there. And for the most part, people try to kind of stay quiet in the hallways. There's not too much disturbance going on in the building. And everybody kind of stays to themselves because the walls are really thin. So it's relatively quiet in the space. And that also includes, like, because the walls are thin, the smells can kind of move around in the place as well. So there's not really a lot of smudging that goes on. So clearing the space after sessions is probably not, at least in the old school way of using sage or Palo Santo, isn't as used as much. And from the first time that I started going in there, I just felt all of the energy of the people who had passed through and had left stuff. So if it was like past relationships or if it was something else, and I just dropped in and did kind of a handing off of the baton. Like at first, when I first cast the circle and started kind of clearing the space, I could feel like it was hard for me to look in the mirror and see myself. Like it looked distorted, like there was energy trying to come through the mirror. And once I actually kind of got the space cleared, at least the area that I was working in, and I kind of again, handed it off to guides and said, if anyone that is, or any energies that are here that could actually help some of these energies that are stuck here move on to their next place, I ask you to do so. Be kind, be gentle, do so with love and compassion. It's not like an exorcism where you're trying to like torch the place.
Right. You're not banishing, you're helping them.
It's literally just helping them move on, kind of like getting stuck out of the stuck place where they are. And being in an old place like that, where that much trauma has gone on, especially in the early, the 1940s, anything before like the 1960s, really, when esotericism started kind of gaining ground. I'm sure that there was a lot of sadness and stuff that was kind of in that place. And after that, literally, it was a short ceremony that I did, and it was literally just, like I said, a kind of handing off with a love and respect. The whole space has felt brighter and has felt like a lot more clear and open. And that is a part of where I'm feeling like energies are noticing. They're literally starting to come to me on their own and being like, hey, that place used to be a little bit darker and a little bit like I could feel it, they kind of avoided it. Now it's like, can you help me?
Yeah.
Is there something that you can do? So I never really thought of myself as being a medium. Honestly, that was not something that I don't really even now have. It's not something that I thought that I would have an interest in or a talent for. And it's not that I'm saying, like I said, I'm not trying to like be a good witch splashing holy water on the walls or anything, but it's literally just, it's holding space. That is what I do for the living. And apparently that is, as a space holder, that doesn't stop at flesh,
So right. But it's really important to set boundaries. So what you said earlier about saying like, you can't come in my house. Like you can come talk to me and I will come when I'm ready. I'll hold office hours from 2 to 3 by the oak tree in the backyard. So for all the other empaths out there right now who might be feeling the same thing that Jeremy's feeling, be mindful, set boundaries. Don't say like, okay, whoever wants to talk to me in my dreams tonight, please come visit. You will get woken up by dead people, guaranteed. Mm-hmm. It's just, that's what they do. They're like, oh, let's play. You're awake. You can see me. And any like teen movie about ghosts, they get excited when someone can see them, and then they want to stick to you because you're the only one who interacts with them, and they're lonely and they're sad and they don't know how to move on
because you started following them on ghost Instagram. So
So basically, instead you put up an Instagram that said, I can talk to ghosts, and they all started following you.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Yeah.
and so being in a space, and sometimes it's not even ghosts. And that's the weird thing, is sometimes it's residual energy, like you said, left over. And people who've done soul retrieval, who've done shamanic soul retrieval work will know what I'm talking about, where you've left a piece of yourself that was rooted in a traumatic experience. If you've done Egyptian mystery schools, then it's the cause that come up. So the aspects of your etheric self that are projections that are not true, that are part of your story. So any moment that kind of made you go and gasp and like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened, whether it was a car accident or a violent act, or just like anything sudden, breaking an arm even, you leave a little tiny bit of yourself either in that place or in a specific spot in your body, which I'm sure, Jeremy, you encounter all the time. And so when you're removing that, if someone maybe is getting lazy that day because they're tired and they're doing energetic work and they're just kind of letting it splash out of their client, or if somebody's doing body work and maybe hasn't done a lot of energetic practices and doesn't quite understand where it all goes when they've released it out of the person, it might stick around. And so you might be feeling residual stuff of people who've lived on the land where you lived,
Right.
of people who are neighbors who are shedding stuff right now, because we live very close to other humans in this day and age. We don't live very far apart, so we absorb the energy of our neighbors. And something else that just came to mind is the idea that you might even be encountering other aspects of you too.
I wanted to touch on that. I'm glad you brought that up. Same thing. Last night we had the house was incredibly energized, and again, people have different ways of feeling it or seeing energy. For me, it literally looks like sparkles. It looks like eyes are in the house, and you can tell how energized the house is by how much whatever room I'm looking in or whatever space I'm focusing on looks like a Christmas tree. Like it literally looks like it's kind of popping off. So last night, again, my partner had a big clearing. She felt like there was a whole lot of stuff in the house, and then she had this epiphany. Like she said it was like divine inspiration that like came to her, and she wrote 10 pages of stuff down. So some of the stuff, when I woke up and she was telling me that, I was kind of like, oh, that's kind of freaky. And then I was like, this might be stuff that was literally blocking that energetic from coming through for her or for me. It's like there's things that when we talk about our problems, if you're going to therapy or if you go to a massage therapist or an energy healer, or if you have a past life regression, there are a lot of these things that's why you go, to have those things removed so that energy will move through. And a lot of times that stuff is the shadow. It's our own stuff that we're not willing to face, whatever the issues are. And that's kind of one of the things that I actually wanted to talk to you about today. And I forgot to mention it when we were on the phone earlier, is what is your weakness? What is the thing that you look at that you think is something that is holding you back? And like, don't ignore it. Like there's a reason why that is there. That's part of the lesson. Like what's the Saturn aspect of that in your life, in your energetic field, that you need to learn from? And I say need to, but like that maybe you're here to learn from.
No,
you
need to.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing with Saturn too. And I'm glad you touched on that, because a lot of people give things like Saturn returns bad rap. But the reason they happen is because you haven't learned your lesson. So if you didn't get it the first time around, you will get it the second time around. And it's not even just that 28 to 30-year span. And this is something I just learned in with my astrology class the course that I'm doing right now. When you look at the Saturn's progression at the quarter marks, which anybody who does magical work knows very, very well that the north, south, east, west points are important, but so are the cross quarters. So like getting into these spaces of degrees and angles and utilizing math on an astrological chart to see like, okay, instead of Saturn just being in the place where it was when I was born, what if it's at a 90 degree angle, which is a square? What if it's at an opposition, which is directly across the chart? What if it's at the other 90 degree angle? At those points, there are just as many monumental events. And sometimes for some people, there's even bigger events because they have other planets at that point that are getting
Right.
activated. And on top of that, if they have things in their chart that make Saturn transitions easy, say like they call it a grand trine, where all the elements are working in harmony, then they might not feel their Saturn return as strongly as one of the squares or oppositions, because then it's in a space that's causing enough tension to make them pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, your weakness is actually going to be your strength. The minute that you acknowledge, like, what are you the most afraid of? What are you the most embarrassed by? What brings you the most guilt? Like, where in your life are you most ashamed to share about yourself? And the minute you say, I chose all of this, I created all of this, and
Mm-hmm.
I love all of this, then everything changes, because you're doing alchemy. You're
Right.
alchemizing. And that's what I was talking to you, Jer, about a little bit earlier. One of my teachers, Carolyn Elliott, loves to use this technique, and she's just written a book about it, and I'm not getting paid to say this. I just love the book. She's hilarious. It's called Existential Kink, and it's this topic where you do these exercises to find these things that you perceive as weaknesses, or that maybe you're like, why does this relationship keep happening? Like, why have the past 3 boyfriends all felt the same and all ended the same? Why does this job never seem to get any better? I can never seem to go anywhere. And the second that you acknowledge that, you're like, your soul's really enjoying the experience.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tap into that, and it's really just aligning yourself to your soul in a different way. It's a more fun human way for me, than just being like all the love and light stuff that you hear about, which I think a lot of times ends up being spiritual bypassing, where people are like, I just want
Right.
to be in communication with my soul, and I'm like, you need to eat some meat.
Yeah. Take a shower. Okay. Just get yourself
Yeah,
cleaned up. You're gonna feel better, I promise. Eat a little meat.
yeah, let's brush
Yeah.
your hair.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's this idea of your soul planned all of it and had the free will to plan all of it. And that's where the weird fate free will crossover is you have complete free will, but your soul figured everything out before you got to the planet.
Right.
It,
So speaking astrologically, I know that Saturn just left Capricorn and
he's
it's
in
heading into
Aquarius.
and it's in Aquarius,
He's
right?
in
So
Aquarius today.
what what do you got to say about that?
Well, okay. You have Mr. I like rules and I
Mhm.
like growth. Like, he's
Mhm.
Mr. Grow Now lessons. But he's like that professor that you're really scared to talk to, but that gives you the best feedback on your papers, but also harsh grades because he wants you to do your best. That's who Saturn really is in
Mhm.
astrology. And to put him in Aquarius really brings about a lot of reflection on community and reframing what that looks like. And we have to look at the last time that these planets are in these places. And when you look at Saturn's other transgressions through Aquarius, there's some pretty monumental stuff that's happened. I'm not going to go super deep into it. Just know that it's about changing the way that our institutions and government and community are all working right now, especially because there's still a lot of planets in Capricorn, mainly Pluto. He's doing a lot of work there. The god of death and transformation is in the field of business and government. So anybody who's like, why is this happening? Let's
So
look at
get
the
out and vote.
stars. Yeah. Uranus is in Taurus, and Uranus is the planet of change and upheaval. His favorite card in the tarot is the Tower. Um, I think Saturn's favorite card in the tarot is the Emperor, and also the Hierophant, and also death. Like, he likes a lot of them. I think Uranus really likes death and the Tower, but the Tower more, and the Fool. He actually, when you look at, there's people who've written down like, these are the exact correspondences between tarot cards and planets, and Uranus actually gets the Fool card the most times that I've seen people write those lists.
Time for new beginnings. Yeah.
Yeah, new beginnings. And the last time that Uranus was in Taurus, guess what happened? Guess what decade it was?
Like recently? This had to have been a couple hundred years ago, right? How
No.
quickly?
They don't move that slow.
Okay, so probably the 60s.
The 30s.
The 30s, okay.
The 30s. So last time Uranus moved into Taurus, we got the New Deal and World War II.
All fun stuff.
So we had, on one hand, super society, like good for the society driven things coming from the top down, right? The government created millions of new jobs. They were doing these huge projects to create national parks and to better the country, and we were booming.
Valley Authority, yeah.
Yeah, we went from complete, utter devastation and depression and 25% unemployment into a space of like, we're going to be the heroes who swoop in and save the day during World War II. But at the same time, in Europe, you had the utter chaos that was happening that led to and progressed through World War II. So Uranus and Taurus really rocks a lot of things because Taurus is Earth element. So having Pluto in Capricorn and Uranus and Taurus, you're getting a lot of changes on the planet, period. And now Saturn's moving into Aquarius, and he's asking us, how are we going to come together on this? Because Aquarius is all about community. It's all about astrology. It's all about opening people's eyes and like breaking out of the system. So having that together it's big. It's us basically restructuring what the planet is going to do as a whole.
Man, it's going to be an exciting couple of years. Well,
Yeah,
it's exciting now, to be completely honest. As wonko as everything is right now, it's still really, it's exciting to pay attention to.
Yeah.
And this comes back to the whole like thing about, weaknesses. It's like where are some places where, because we've got a lot of downtime right now, like saw somebody had posted the other day, and I didn't mean to interrupt you. I know we'll probably come back to whatever it was you're about to say, but somebody had posted the other day, they were like, while the city shut down, or while the country shut down, or the world pretty much at this point, you don't have to write the next great novel. You don't have to do this, that, or the other. Like, it's talking about all the things that you don't have to do. And then you see somebody else will post like, this is your chance to do these brand new things, like venture out and start, again, play guitar, or like learn how to do something new. And it's like, we can ride it in the middle, guys. Again, like, take your time. Like, if you want to try something new, if you want to start something, just clean your house.
You're such a Libra.
Yeah, like find some freaking balance, for God's sake.
And the Virgo over here is like, be your best self ever.
Go and pick up some Post-it notes and start organizing shit.
No, literally clean out your closets. That's probably the most productive thing you can do right now, is clean your closets out and literally clear your space, do some feng shui. Make sure that you're being productive in a healthy way rather than in an avoidance way. I think way too many people are just on their phones all day long, as opposed to, because now like they're like, oh, I have extra time to just sit. And some people are being really goal oriented, and they're using the time in a very, very productive way. Like artists, especially, I've seen so many people creating new music and new paintings and new wonderful things. I've seen so many people who are yoga teachers or meditation teachers creating beautiful work for donation or for Patreon or for other things, where they're selling their videos now, and they've got a thriving business suddenly that they didn't have before. And I've seen a lot of other people too get very proactive around the house, where they're planting plants and they're spending time in their gardens, and they're there was a meme that was like, now all of you who are laughing at me for knowing which weeds you're supposed to eat are asking for help. And so it's that idea of we get time to actually go within. Mm-hmm. This is the card, like the tarot card would be the Hermit. Just like, here you go meditate. You have to sit still by yourself for a long time. And we don't have to normally do that. We get to escape. A lot of people are constantly running away from their homes, and now they have to be at home and be with themselves.
Yeah.
And it's so beautiful, and I love it. And I am probably a little bit of a spiritual masochist that way, where I'm like, do your work.
Yeah.
Find your shadow. Find your shadow. It's great. Make friends with your shadow. And the planet is doing that right now. That's the point I was going to make earlier, is when you said, like, what is your weakness? We're looking at our culture's weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
We have crazy, insane monetary weaknesses, right? Where it's like, oh, there's no money. Oh, there's all this money to bail us out, but there's no money. The economy's crashing, but we have to give everybody $1,000. So it's like there's all these dark spaces as a culture and as a global community that we're finally starting to acknowledge, where everyone is panicking about this virus, and we should have been panicking about climate change 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's afraid that there aren't going to be enough supplies. Well, what about all the refugees who haven't had supplies for 5 years? Like, it's just constant, where the first world people are finally realizing, oh, we actually are all in this together.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't go on pretending that everything is fine.
Yeah. I mean, especially since, again, I kind of had my awakening in like 2009, 2008. So like, again, this stuff has been I've been very aware of it, and it's been very present in my mind, which still doesn't even seem like it was that long ago. It's 12 years,
Yeah.
but it's like, it's hard for me to not say, I told you so, like with
Yeah.
all this stuff that's happened. But I've also been, I haven't been planning. I've been doing work, but I've been, kind of slowly at it. Again, I'm trying to find that Libra balance of like, let's not rush, guys. Let's just try to see everybody's side, as opposed to, we really need to make some dramatic changes on this front. Because I've found that whenever I do that, it's hard to stick with it, and then I do get down on myself. So when you start heading full steam in one direction for a month and a half or 2 months, and then it's kind of like, I'm really burnt out on this. I just want to go eat an entire cheesecake, or whatever the thing is. So
you just need more, either you need more Virgo friends or you need more Aries friends, because one will just get you started on all the things. They're like, oh, why wait? Let's do it. And the other one will be like, you dropped the ball. Why?
Well, I've told you, I've got so many earth signs in my life. So that's like, it's not surprising as that's the case.
Yeah. Something that I keep hearing in my head right now is, so if you don't know who Trevor Hall is, go look up his music. I love it. And his most recent album, on Spotify, The Fruitful Darkness, is entirely written based off of astrology, because he did the same course that I'm doing right now. And he has the same Saturn placement that I do. And a lot of the songs are about activating that energy. And one of them, the chorus is, I've been learning how to walk in my fire, live in my fire, love in my fire. How do we step into that fiery place? And Jerry, you and I talk a lot about Kali and Kali Ma and Durga and these really fiery goddesses from India. And I've always felt a huge kinship with the fire goddesses of Egypt. Hathor and is like related to the sun, and then Isis always has the sun disk, but Sekhmet is my particular favorite, and she's kind of a raging war machine, the way that Kali is. She just like decimates things when people aren't behaving properly, and she comes down out of the sun, and it's this like solar fire of cleansing. And fire as a transformative tool is huge in alchemy, and is huge in magical practices and in yogic practices. And so I feel like a lot of us who are in this kind of age range of 28 to 38 we're experiencing a lot of fire coming up right now, because either we didn't listen during our Saturn return, and so now we're struggling, or we just had our Saturn return and we're learning how to fully embody it, or we're just stepping into the Saturn return. And it's this kind of trial by fire shamanic experience that lasts years.
Right.
And so how do we as a planet go, like, we're literally in a space where this virus is only killed by extreme heat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like 180 degrees. And so we're literally having to be in our fire. Like, how do we as a collective, step into a space where we look at all the things that are going on shadow-wise in our planet so we can shine light on it? How do we be the fire that activates the other candles, that just doesn't, like, you know, turn into a blaze that burns everything out instead?
Right.
So like you said, finding balance, managing that fire is really important.
Mm-hmm.
But it also translates to light body technology, right? Because you're literally activating your light, which is fire. So I think one of the best mantras for that, and you and I talked about this beforehand, is one that taps into your own inner guru and that activates that light body even further. So we did it with chakras, we did it with planets. How do we do it now?
Well, the mantra that I believe that you're referring to is Om Namo Guru Dev Namo, and that's your inner guru. You know, we all have an intuition. You know, we talk about our gut sense, and I think that comes back to the whole fire too, because that's associated with the fire in our gut, our Ram, you know, any of the sun gods. It's associated with truth, with actuality, and with getting rid of the things that aren't real in those places. So Om Namo Guru Dev Namo. You're tapping into that truth that you know, that inner wisdom that you already have inside of you, and it's going to burn out the stuff that doesn't serve. That stuff's going to fall by the wayside. You're going to be able to see the forest and the trees. You know.
Yeah. And in this chant, is the first syllable Om or Ong?
It is Ong, which is the same as Om. It's the energetic is actually, the energetic is a different pathway, obviously, because you're using NG instead of OM. But the path, or the end goal, is actually the same. So Om and Ong are similar. It's also sounds more closely related to Tibetan than it does to Sanskrit or Devanagari. So the Sanskrit itself is a lot of the symbols are similar in both of the languages, but how they're pronounced, again, when you look at the Sanskrit alphabet, you've got 50, and it's really is about like where your tongue is hitting, how the energy is moving from the back of your throat to the front of your throat. And Om is a lot more closed off. Ong is in the back of the throat. So still has the same closed off vibration, but it's where it's placed on your palate.
And is this one still from India yoga practices, or is this Tibetan?
This is, I believe this is Indian. I want to say that this is Sanskrit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Because that Ong, I always have assumed that this is actually a Tibetan chant.
Well, actually, no, well, I take that back. It says Om in. It's the mantra is the same. So Ong is, I think, the Tibetan. It's the same mantra. It's just Om or Ong. Because the Sanskrit that I have in front of me says Om Namo Bhagavate. Oh, that's Vasudevaya. I'm looking at the wrong mantra. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the next one.
There we go. Hey, look, there's a reason why I was on this page.
Yeah. So Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Yes.
Can be sung very prettily as well. I think the way I learned it, and you might know another one, which I would love for you to share, is, hold on. Wait, no. Now I can't remember the melody. Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I don't know where I learned that melody from, but that's the one that I know.
Probably a past life.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Because that's the way I've always sung it. And Anton looked at me one night. He's like, I like the way you sing that. I was like, oh, thanks.
Thanks, love.
Doing my sadhana at 10 o'clock in the evening. But yeah, it was funny because it was just normal. It's just how it came out. So
right.
How do you do?
So the translation for this one is, Om is the name of the indweller in me that is ever in unity with all of creation. Kindly reveal your truth to me. So again, it's another one of those ways of tapping into, it obviously doesn't use the term guru, but it's being able to tap into your inner Vishnu, because this is a Vishnu mantra. And Vishnu is all about preservation and keeping stuff going. So if you don't have you're looking for a direction to be pointed, you know, you're your inner self is a good way to kind of find something that is going to be trustworthy. You know, you're not having to really get something from outside of you, which is
And
something we'll
that's
also get
so
into when
important
at
right
some
now.
point when we're talking about the Trinity. There's so many different ways of looking at it. We've talked about like the actual pronunciation of the Sanskrit and why it's so important. Um, Part of this is literally how the body is broken down. Like, you know, Brahma is the creator or the created. Vishnu is the preserver. He is
Mm-hmm.
constantly being reborn. He's constantly coming back. And Shiva is the mental space and anything above and higher, right? So he's like the spiritual aspect. And that's just the breakdown of the body. Literally, it's the physical body, the spirit that dwells inside of us, and then our mental capacity, which is, you know, our ability to communicate, our ability to destroy and be untethered to the flesh, which is what Shiva is as well as the destroyer. So there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of those aspects that we will get into that'll, you know, kind of get rid of some of the mystery as well. Like there's the language itself, Sanskrit is such a beautiful language. And one of the
It really
teachers
is.
that I've really been digging recently was talking about, you know, translations for certain uh, Ganesh mantras where, you know, Gana is the face, and it's also elephant. Like the way that the words are pronounced, depending on if you put the words closely together, if they're pronounced closely together. So when you start to look at some of the imagery that we see in Hinduism as well, like there's a reason why the imagery is what it is, because it's like, well, it's this, but it's also kind of hidden. You know, there's this
Right.
occult feature to it where it's like you have to be you to really understand it, you can't just look at the English translation of it. You really have to know what the language is saying and what the energetic of the language is to really get the most out of it. Because, you know, there are a lot of people who worship Ganesh and kind of see that as, you know, as he's a deity that does these things, and you put your prayers out and you put your alms out and you hope that he does his thing, and you think about it like dualistically, like it's separate. And then if you look
Right.
at it from the standpoint of the word is, you know, something else aside from, you know, elephant headed God, then you start to understand that's the energy inside of you. You know, this the thing that we
Mm-hmm.
constantly keep coming back to and kind of hammering on, at least I do, because I again want to remove so much of the woo from this. I want people to be as excited about Sanskrit as I am. And I would like it to, like I was saying, the some of the pages that I follow or some of the YouTube channels that I follow that have like, you know, 10,000 or 30,000 people. Think about how many people there are in India that aren't really in touch completely with the language of their own subcontinent. So
Right.
it's like for it to be able to kind of branch out, it's incredibly important to me to be able to spread this and for people to you know, be as passionate about it as I am, you know.
And I feel like it's less about removing the woo and more about making the woo desirable. Because with Sanskrit, it's so different than just learning a magic spell,
Yeah.
right? I could tell you, here's a magic spell for connecting to your own divine self. We're going to do a triple soul alignment. We're going to bring your soul closer to your body, like literally in proximity to your body, and you're going to feel energy radiating through you. And this is the phrase you repeat, like as above, so below, and blah, 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 3 times 3, here you go. And so you could do what a lot of things on Pinterest or Facebook will tell you when it comes to spell work. Or you could learn an actual language that is magic in and of itself.
Yes.
And a lot of people, I think, don't have the time or the patience or don't feel capable. And that's the one that I feel the worst about, when they're like, I'm just not good at
Yeah.
languages. And I want to say that's a belief. We're all humans are all capable. It's a muscle and it's work. And um
Well,
it
it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And this
yeah,
is literally
that's what
this
I was
is an
talking about,
ultra
willingness
marathon.
earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a willingness to stay awake. It's a willingness to stay attuned. It's a willingness to keep admitting that you don't know half of what you thought you know,
Mm-hmm.
and that there's twice as much to learn as you thought there was last year. And how wonderful that is, right? How wonderful that our universe is constantly expanding, not just in a physical like physics sense, right? They say that like all the galaxies are constantly spinning away further and further apart from each other from the center point where they started, but literally our own universes are constantly expanding. The limits of our minds are expanding right now. The limits of our connection to each other on this planet itself are expanding right now. What is going on in our body, and being able to be so super hyper aware that we're shifting genetic codes and DNA codes and activating like dragon codes that we didn't even know existed before. So being able to activate your light body is so important right now. And a lot of people are like, oh, she's just talking woo-woo energetics again. Like, what about the physical stuff to do? Yeah, go great. Wash your hands. But
and get rid of the mucoid plaque that's built up in your intestines. Like there's
yeah,
a lot of stuff. There's other things that you need to worry about as well. Yeah.
there's so many physical things you can do, right?
Right.
And at the same time, don't neglect all of the energetic things, because the physical things are just the calcification of the energetic. They're just the densest form of what's going on around you energetically.
Right.
And if you don't take care of those energetic practices, if you don't really focus on turning up your frequencies around you as much as possible, by not watching the news all the time, by not checking in with like posts all the time, by not calling family members that you know are in a state of panic, like letting them come to you, essentially. Right. Putting up really clear boundaries and saying like, I'm going to keep my field just as healthy as I'm keeping my physical self. Yeah, shelter in place in your home, but also do the same with your energy. Let your energy field take this as a time to kind of bathe itself and release a lot of stuff that's been stuck, and to have you fully attuned to it. So the minute you're going back out into the world, the minute you're having to interact with a ton of people in a city, it doesn't turn back off. It like stays on and stays bright. And you do the trick of Indra's net. In Hindu mythology, Indra has this giant net, and each little crossing point is like a person, and there's a light. And the minute that you lift one corner, it pulls up all the other lights with it. And the same thing happens like with magnets. If you put one magnet down on a table with other potential magnets, they all kind of go whoop and go together and grab each other, and you start pulling up that first magnet, and they all start rising with it. And so it's the same concept. If you can get your light body really, really beautifully healthy right now, and that's the way I want you to look at it. It's not about shining brighter than anybody else. It's not about thinking you're better or spiritually bypassing. It's about making your energetic body healthy. Then you will be able to help others do the same.
Right.
Just by being you.
And I mean, it's again, there was a preacher that I remember hearing say at one point, don't just be, at least this was, of course, I was in a Christian church when he said this, but he was like, don't just be a Sunday Christian. You have to be a Christian every day, and literally like take the Christianity part out of it and just like spirituality. Like, how are you spending every other day of your time in your spiritual practice? Are you chunking a little bit of time into it on a regular basis? Are you going wholeheartedly into it when you're doing it? It's just like your yoga practice. I've seen people who have practiced yoga for years and years and years, and yeah, they're super flexible, but their body is not necessarily what I would consider healthy, and what they're doing on their downtime is not considered healthy. I see them, post and I'm trying not to be judgmental about it, but I see people post like having a glass of wine or doing whatever else. And I'm like, that's part of it, like because how do you feel when you're doing that? Do you feel the same way you do when you're on your mat? Do you feel the same way when you do something really nice for somebody else? When you're giving food to somebody who really needs it, like those are those good feelings that you want to continue to promote, because if we're always doing all of that at the same time, then yeah, we're going to be able to pull through this where we are right now, and I think we'll all be better for it. But if it's literally, if you do become the bear who's trying to like bring everything in, and you're just wanting to make sure that you make through the winter, and you've got all the toilet paper that you've stocked in your pantry or whatever, then you're really not helping yourself out, because you can only wipe your ass so many times in a day, and you're not helping anybody else out. So
yeah, I do think there, one last point to this though is, as much as we're saying like be your best, do your best, you're gonna mess up, you're human. Don't use that as an excuse,
right?
Is the thing. Give yourself forgiveness, but don't use it as an excuse. And it's really easy to fall off the bandwagon and then just kind of stay on the ground. Because when we see our own weaknesses, we get a little stuck in them sometimes. And I'm speaking from experience. And I think that just being willing to say, like, you know what, tomorrow I'm just going to start over. And you don't even have to necessarily start over. You can just pick up where you left off.
Right.
And this is something I really learned as a parent, is like, okay, maybe this morning started out kind of crappy, where we were all arguing because I was trying to get socks on somebody and a diaper on somebody else and like get myself dressed, and everybody was just screaming. And okay, let's all stop. Let's all take a breath. Let's all agree that from this point on, we're just going to go forward a little bit differently. I'm going to breathe more. I'm not going to force you to wear socks. We're going to roll through. And kind of doing the same thing with your psyche, where maybe you binge watched all of your favorite show on Netflix and now you're like, what do I do now? Right. Well, maybe read a book like Spiral Dance and start doing some practices. Maybe
go onto YouTube and listen to the Soundarya Lahari. Like, listen to some of these esoteric mantras that are going to, you will be surprised at how much of an impact they have on you, you know?
Right. Like, even just doing what we're saying and like getting a mala, sitting down, chanting Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, and picturing your soul, whatever you think it looks like, being in your presence, like a bright shining light that's literally connected to you at all times, being inside of you. Like, what does that feel like? And sometimes it's a fake it till you make it thing, where people are like, I don't know if I'm feeling anything. Well, you'll know. You'll know when you're doing it. Like, and the thing is, you don't have to worry about whether you're doing it right. Either. Your body knows what to do.
Right. And I mean, this is something that at some point we were talking about wanting to do interviews or with other people at some point. And I would really like to sit down with my partner, Lindsay, and have a discussion about, how you integrate some things into your daily life. Because again, we're talking about the title of our podcast is Magic and Mantra, but this is really about integrating these things so that you can live your daily life the best that you can. Right. And one of the things that she talks about too, which I know I catch myself in, and I know that most people actually do, is that cycle of hero, victim, and villain. So we put these labels on ourselves of like, I'm a bad person because of this, and I'm going to do these good things to try to save myself or to save this other person, or, oh, I had this horrible thing happen to me. It's like we get stuck in this constant loop, and I do it a lot, because I'll look back at my past and I'll go, you know what, I'm here because of this, and I really I'm pissed off because I did that, or whatever it is. And it's like being able to, again, a lot of this stuff with using the avatars or using any of the other energies that are outside of us is a literal pulling yourself out of your situation and looking at it from another standpoint, right? Like
it's meditation. Right. That's activation.
Yeah, I'm just going to dump it on the table and let's sort through some of this shit that's here. Like, what all do I have kind of in my backpack? So, again, I don't necessarily want to go deep into that, but it was just something that kind of popped into my head because we keep going back and forth about, and saying like, feel okay, if you want to start working on something new, but don't feel too bad if you want to take some time and get rest and make sure that you're healthy while you're doing this. Like, I know it can kind of feel bipolar, and that is also the world that we live in. Like we live in a culture where there's pundits on television that are spouting rhetoric about whatever it is. News isn't news. It's
first, don't watch the news.
I mean,
so
it's not just the news. That's everywhere you go. If you log onto anybody's Instagram page, you're going to have the same thing. People are promoting whatever they think is the thing that is going to either bring them money or fame or attention or whatever it is. Like, again, extract yourself, take a few moments, take a couple of really deep breaths, and then, reset, reassess. And some of these mantras are a good way to kind of get back into what your viewpoint is. And the last one that I kind of want to throw out before we wrap up tonight is super basic. It's super easy. And the translation for it is, I am that I am. And it's so hum. That's all it is. So it's so hum. So on the out breath, hum on the in breath. And it's, you know, as you're repeating it, you're saying, I am that I am. So I am me. I am this. I am also the other thing. You know, I'm living in both states at the same time, coexisting.
I'm so doing that right
Yeah.
now. My children are banging on the door, but I'm listening to you and thinking that sounds
You're like, I
divine.
am that. That I am.
I am that I am. And on
And
that
on that
note,
note,
if you want these recorded chants, so 108 is the sacred number of Amala. If you want one of these chants recorded the whole way through for you, because you're like, I want to sing along with someone, I don't feel comfortable singing just by myself yet. Jeremy and I both have Patreons, and you can check those out, where we have these recordings available for members. And we also, if you want just something personal where you're like, I really want something specifically for this, please feel free to reach out. Either Jeremy Renta or Voice Hands and Heart on Instagram for Jer, or Witch Goddess Mama for me, Amy, and ask us and say, like, what can I do for this mantra? And if you want, we can record it for you and work out some kind of money exchange for that. And we're more than happy to do so because we love this stuff. We geek out on this stuff. And so
while we're spending
like
Sunday nights
sessions,
doing this,
doing one-on-one sessions, even if you're like, I don't even know half of the stuff you're talking about, can we just go over that? Like you said something about dragons and aliens and a 3-part god from India and something about Egypt, and I think you said something else
at the
about
35-minute
some
mark,
kind
my
of
brain
witchcraft
melted.
thing. Yeah, so and then also like purified water with no fluoride. So like if that's you, if you're like, I really am just so brand new to this and I don't even know where to start, you can also do a session with us around that, because we love to be teachers and guides on this aspect, and are more than happy to have people reach out to us and to do a one-on-one call, one-on-one session with you, especially if you're at home right now and you're looking for something more to do, because you don't have to commute to work back and forth every day.
I concur. Okay. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Awesome. All right. Well, I love you, brother.
Too.
And happy chanting.
Yeah.
I'll talk
to you.